A small-town mayor vanished together with his daughter in 1980. They were last seen leaving the golf club before disappearing without a trace. But 8 years later, the town's church gets renovated, and buried beneath the stone floor, a long-hidden secret finally comes to light, explaining why they never came home. The morning air in New Braunfels, Texas, carried a hint of autumn coolness as Rachel Whitaker completed the final stretch of her daily jog. 8 o'clock struck on the courthouse tower just as she slowed to a walk, her breathing steadying into the familiar rhythm she'd perfected over 8 long years. At 47, she maintained these morning rituals with religious dedication. They were the scaffolding that held her days together since Harold and Phoebe had vanished. Her husband Harold had been 45 when he disappeared, still in his prime as the town's mayor. Their daughter Phoebe, just 10 years old, had been excited about the golf outing that September day. They'd been spotted leaving the golf club, and someone had seen them stop at a convenience store for cold drinks and snacks. But they never made it home. The first 2 years had been the worst. Rachel would wake to crushing anxiety, panic attacks that left her gasping in the pre-dawn darkness. She'd spent those mornings paralyzed by grief and uncertainty. The police search had been extensive, the community rallying with volunteers combing through fields and forests. But nothing. No bodies, no ransom demands, no explanations. Just an empty house and questions that multiplied like cancer cells. The morning walks had started as therapy. Over time, they'd evolved into something more, a meditation, a clearing of the head that gave her just enough strength to face each day. At least walking meant she was still moving forward, even if she didn't know toward what. Today, she'd chosen a different route. She changed her path every few months, partly for variety, but mostly because routine had become both comfort and trap. The new route took her past First Grace Church, its limestone walls glowing pale gold in the morning sun. But something was wrong. Police cruisers clustered around the entrance, their lights silent, but presence unmistakable. Construction vehicles sat at odd angles, as if hastily abandoned. A couple stood at the edge of the scene, craning their necks to see past the yellow tape. Rachel approached them, her pulse quickening with unnamed dread. "What's happening here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. The woman turned, her face animated with the peculiar excitement that accompanies unexpected drama. "We're not sure exactly. The church started renovations yesterday. See all those construction trucks? But something happened this morning. Maybe they found something, old religious artifacts or whatnot." Rachel nodded absently, her attention drawn to the controlled chaos near the church entrance. Officers moved with purpose, not the languid pace of routine investigation. Her stomach tightened. Then she spotted a familiar figure. Hans Carson, Detective Roy DeWitt's partner. He'd worked her family's case from the beginning. Hans saw her at the same moment, and his expression shifted from professional focus to something that made Rachel's blood run cold. Relief mixed with dread crossed his features as he hurried toward her. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, slightly breathless. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. Called your home, even sent an officer to check." "I was on my morning walk," Rachel managed, her mouth suddenly dry. "Hans, what's going on? Why were you looking for me?" Hans glanced back at the church, then met her eyes with professional gentleness that terrified her more than urgency would have. "We've found something related to your family's case. We need identification." The world tilted slightly. Rachel gripped Hans's arm to steady herself. What did you find?" "Please, Mrs. Whitaker, you need to prepare yourself. It's going to be difficult." The words hung between them like a death sentence. Rachel felt her legs moving, following Hans through the police line, past the grand entrance of the church. They entered the cool interior, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. Through the service hall they went, then down corridors she'd never seen before, deeper into the church's belly. The crowd grew thicker, church staff in their collars, pastors with worried faces, construction workers still in their hard hats and dust-covered clothes. They parted like a biblical sea as Hans led her forward. A hole gaped in the floor, rough and recent. Old wooden steps, uneven and worn smooth by countless feet, descended into darkness. The smell hit her first, musty, earthy, with something else underneath that made her stomach clench. Detective Roy DeWitt waited at the bottom, his weathered face grave. "Rachel," he said softly, "thank you for coming. I know this is hard." "Just tell me," she whispered. Roy gestured to the space around them. This morning, the renovation crew was working on the staircase to the bell tower. Some concrete fell, heavy pieces from up high, destroyed the wooden flooring here, and revealed this basement. "Hidden?" Rachel's voice cracked. "What do you mean, hidden?" "This room doesn't exist on any church map. The staff had no knowledge of it. Someone went to great lengths to keep this place secret." Rachel's gaze fell on the center of the room. An oil barrel, industrial-sized, sat in a crater of disturbed earth. Concrete fragments littered the ground around it. "The construction worker nearly tripped on it," Roy continued. "The lid was just visible at surface level. When they realized the barrel had been deliberately buried, sealed in concrete, and none of the church staff knew about this, they called us." "What's inside?" The question came out as barely a breath. Roy and Hans exchanged glances. Hans produced a surgical mask. "Put this on, please." Rachel's hands shook as she fitted the mask over her face. She knew. In her bones, she knew what waited in that barrel. But knowing and seeing were different tortures. The officers moved aside as Roy pried open the lid. The smell intensified despite the mask, and Rachel saw— "Oh, my God!" the shriek tore from her throat. Harold? Even after 8 years, even with the deterioration, she knew him. The blue polo shirt he'd worn that last morning faded now to gray. The beige pants she'd pressed for him, his favorite shoes, the ones she'd bought him for his birthday. The cowboy hat that had been his signature, now shapeless and stained. Her knees gave out, and every ounce of strength left her. Strong hands caught her, pulled her back from the barrel. Someone ripped off her mask as she gasped for air. They settled her on the floor against the far wall, Hans kneeling beside her with a hand on her shoulder. "Breathe, Mrs. Whitaker. Deep breaths. That's it." The tears came in torrents. 8 years of uncertainty, of hope and dread in equal measure, collapsed into this moment. Harold was dead. Had been dead all along, sealed in this nightmare tomb while she'd waited and wondered. "Phoebe?" she managed between sobs. "Did you find my Phoebe?" Roy crouched beside her. "No sign of your daughter. I'm sorry. This was the only— Remains?" A fresh wave of grief crashed over her. One answer had spawned 1,000 new questions. Where was her baby girl? Roy's voice gentled further. "Rachel, I know this is overwhelming, but whoever did this is still out there. With this evidence, with your help, we can find them. We can get justice for Harold." She forced herself to stand, to look again at the barrel. "Yes, it's him, Harold Whitaker, the town's mayor, my husband." "We'll need to examine him," Roy said. "Being sealed in that barrel for so long, it looks like he underwent some level of mummification. An autopsy may be necessary to determine the cause of death. We'll also need to collect dental records, analyze bone structure. The regional crime lab has forensic anthropologists who can handle the formal identification." "Do you really need to take him apart?" Rachel's voice broke. "Can't you just do DNA testing?" Roy shook his head. "That technology is still new. The first conviction using DNA evidence only happened last year in the People v. Wesley case in New York. The tests are slow, expensive. Only major federal or state labs have the capability." Rachel was quiet for a long time, but final she nodded numbly. "Do what you need to. Just, please, I want to bury him properly." You have my word. Harold was this town's mayor. He'll receive the respect he deserves. And Rachel, there's still hope for Phoebe. She could be alive. She'd be 18 now, Rachel whispered. 8 years. What kind of evil does this? What kind of person seals a man in a barrel? They climbed the uneven steps back to the church proper. The morning light streaming through stained glass seemed obscene after the darkness below. The church pastor approached, his face creased with concern. Mrs. Whitaker, I'm so deeply sorry. If you need spiritual counsel, time to pray, I'm here. Before Rachel could respond, another voice cut through the hushed atmosphere. Rachel? Mayor Clyde Rennick strode toward them, his face a mask of professional sympathy. I heard what happened. I came as soon as I could. This is terrible, just terrible. Mayor Rennick, Rachel acknowledged weakly. Your husband was a great man. His work, his vision for this town, it inspired me to follow in his footsteps. Rennick's voice carried the practiced cadence of political sympathy. If there's anything the city can do. He turned to Detective DeWitt. I need to speak with you about the investigation. This is a priority for the city. Rachel excused herself and went alone in the quiet sanctuary. She sank into a pew, staring at the cross above the altar. Memories flooded back. Sunday services where Phoebe would draw pictures on the bulletin. Harold's strong hand holding hers during prayer. The door creaked open. Hans Carson stood in the entrance. Mrs. Whitaker, we're ready to take you home. Thank you, she said, rising on unsteady legs. In the parking lot, Mayor Rennick intercepted them. Rachel, please, let me drive you home. We're going the same direction anyway. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. She was too drained to refuse kindness, even if it came wrapped in political necessity. Thank you, Mayor. That's very kind. Hans squeezed her shoulder gently. We'll be in touch soon, Mrs. Whitaker. Try to rest. As she followed Mayor Rennick to his car, Rachel couldn't shake the image of Harold in that barrel. 8 years of questions had led to this moment, but instead of closure, she felt only the yawning gulf of new mysteries. Who had done this? Why? And where? God, where was her daughter? The morning that had begun with routine exercise had shattered into nightmare. As she walked toward the mayor's car, Rachel Whitaker felt the weight of 8 years crushing down on her shoulders, heavier than any physical burden she'd ever carried. Mayor Rennick's car was a gleaming black Lincoln Town car, its chrome catching the morning sun. Rachel slid into the leather passenger seat, the luxury jarring after the horror of the church basement. A car phone sat prominently between the seats, not the basic Motorola Dynatac that Harold had reluctantly installed in his modest Buick, but a sleek, newer model that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. She tried not to think ill of it. After what she'd seen today, she had no capacity for petty judgments. Still, the contrast nagged at her. Harold had driven the same car for 6 years, insisting taxpayer money should go to schools and roads, not mayoral comfort. Rennick started the engine, the V8 purring smoothly. Harold was an inspiration, he began, pulling out of the church parking lot. His dedication to public service, his vision for New Braunfels. There's something I've wanted to ask for a long time, Rachel interrupted, unable to endure more platitudes. My husband's journals, his notes, his work from the mayor's office, do you still have them? The car swerved slightly. Rennick's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The silence stretched long enough that Rachel wondered if he'd heard her. Yes, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. That's right. After the police reviewed everything for the investigation, those items were returned to City Hall. Standard procedure. Anything left behind became city property. His personal journals became city property? We had to protect sensitive records, Rennick said smoothly. Some of those documents contained confidential information about city business, personnel matters. I want them back. Rachel's voice carried steel she didn't know she still possessed. At least his personal journals and notes, they belonged to him, not the city. Rennick adjusted his rearview mirror unnecessarily. I'll have to check where everything was stored. I think it's locked in the archive room. These things get moved around over the years. Could we collect them now? The words tumbled out before Rachel could stop them. After today, I'd like to have something that reminds me of his work. I don't feel like going home yet. The mayor's jaw worked as if chewing words he wanted to say. Finally, he sighed. I have time now. We can check quickly. The morning clerk should know where things are filed. City Hall stood just 3 blocks from the church, its limestone facade a testament to 1950s civic optimism. Rennick parked in his reserved spot, the one that used to have Harold's name. Inside, the building smelled of floor wax and old paper. The morning clerk, a middle-aged woman with horn-rimmed glasses, looked up from her IBM Selectric typewriter. Mayor Rennick, she said, surprise coloring her voice. You're early today. Mrs. Patterson, this is Rachel Whitaker. She needs to retrieve some of her late husband's belongings from the archive room. Mrs. Patterson's face softened with sympathy. Oh, Mrs. Whitaker, I heard about... I'm so sorry. She pulled a large key ring from her desk drawer. Follow me. The archive room occupied a corner of the basement, fluorescent lights humming over rows of metal shelving. Mrs. Patterson navigated the maze with practiced ease, stopping at a section marked 1980 to 1985. Here we are, she said, pulling out a cardboard box marked H. Whitaker, Personal. I separated the official documents years ago. Those are filed with city records. This box contains his personal items, journals, notes, some photographs. Rachel's hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Harold's handwriting stared back at her from a leather-bound journal. A coffee stain marked one corner. She remembered the morning Phoebe had knocked over his mug while showing him a drawing. Thank you, she whispered. Mrs. Patterson patted her arm. Take your time. The whole box is yours. Back in the lobby, Rennick offered to carry the box. His fingers brushed hers as he took it, and Rachel noticed his palm was damp despite the cool morning. In the car, the box sat between them like a silent passenger. Rachel stared out the window, watching familiar streets blur past. I'm sorry to trouble you further, she said as they neared downtown. But would you mind dropping me at the library instead? I still can't face going home alone, not after everything. She caught movement in her peripheral vision, Rennick's head turning sharply, his eyes rolling skyward. Or had she imagined it? The gesture lasted barely a second before his political mask slipped back into place. No worries at all, he said, his tone warm again. The library it is. Take all the time you need. Thank you, you've been very kind. Don't mention it. We're like family, all of us who serve this town. Harold was a good friend. The words rang hollow as brass, but Rachel didn't have the energy to parse their sincerity. She clutched the box tighter as the library came into view, its red brick walls promising quiet sanctuary. The car pulled to the curb. Rennick left the engine running, clearly eager to be on his way. Thank you again, Mayor, Rachel said, gathering the box. Harold would have done the same for me, Rennick replied, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Rachel stepped onto the sidewalk, the box heavy with 8 years of waiting. She climbed the library steps, carrying the last pieces of her husband's life. The library's heavy oak doors closed behind Rachel with a soft thud. The familiar smell of old books and lemon polish wrapped around her like a blanket. The librarian, Mrs. Hendricks, looked up from the circulation desk where she was stamping due dates in returned books. Mrs. Whitaker, she said warmly, noting the box in Rachel's arms. I saw you arrive with Mayor Rennick. How thoughtful of him. Would you like somewhere quiet to work? That would be wonderful, Rachel managed. Mrs. Hendricks led her past the card catalogs and microfiche readers to a small study room at the back. A single table and chair sat beneath a window overlooking the library's garden. "Take all the time you need," Mrs. Hendricks said gently, closing the door. Rachel set the box on the table and sank into the chair. Her hands shook as she removed the journals, touching each spine like a talisman. The most recent one, 1980, called to her. She opened it to the first page. Harold's precise handwriting blurred before her eyes. She squinted, held the journal at arm's length, then closer. Nothing helped. The words swam like fish refusing to be caught. Her reading glasses. Of course. They were sitting on her nightstand where she'd left them before her morning jog. All she had was her small wallet tucked in her jogging shorts pocket. Rachel emerged from the study room. Mrs. Hendricks was helping a patron find something in the reference section. "I'll be right back," Rachel called softly. "Need to get reading glasses." "There's a pharmacy 3 doors down," Mrs. Hendricks offered. "They have a display of reading glasses right up front." Outside, the late morning sun had climbed higher. Rachel blinked in the brightness, then froze. Mayor Rennick's Lincoln still sat at the curb, engine off now, the mayor nowhere in sight. Odd. She'd assumed he had pressing business elsewhere. The pharmacy was exactly where Mrs. Hendricks had said. A bell should have chimed when Rachel entered, but the mechanism appeared broken. The store stretched back into shadows, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. No one stood behind the counter. The cash register sat closed, a cup of coffee cooling beside it. The spinning rack of reading glasses stood near the pharmacy counter. Rachel selected a pair marked plus $1.50, her usual prescription. She tested them on a nearby magazine. Good enough. "Hello," she called. "I need to pay for these." Silence. "Excuse me? Is anyone here?" Still nothing. The coffee cup suggested someone had been here recently. Rachel glanced at her watch. 10:45 a.m. Surely they weren't closed. Reluctantly, she moved behind the counter. A narrow hallway led to what appeared to be offices. One door stood closed, but voices drifted through the thin wood. "Your boss needs to handle this properly." A man's voice, tense and low. "Get moving on it." Another voice responded, younger, nervous. "We did our job. We didn't know—" "Not again. Told you it's okay. Safe here." Rachel stood frozen, reading glasses clutched in her hand. The conversation meant nothing to her without context, but something in the urgency of the voices made her skin prickle. This was none of her business. She raised her hand to knock. The voices stopped instantly. Footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal a thin man in a pharmacy coat, his name tag reading Dale. "Oh!" Rachel stepped back. "I'm sorry. I need to buy these glasses," but no one was out front. Over Dale's shoulder, she glimpsed the office interior. Mayor Rennick sat in a metal chair, his face tight with an expression she'd never seen before. Their eyes met. The mask slipped back on instantly. Rennick stood, smoothing his tie. "Rachel, what a coincidence!" He moved past Dale to the doorway. "I hope you're not disturbed. I was just conducting a routine inspection, making sure our local businesses comply with health regulations." The look he gave Dale could have frozen water. Dale cleared his throat. "Of course, everything's in order, Mayor." He gestured toward the front. "Let me ring those up for you, ma'am." At the register, Rachel fumbled for her wallet. Rennick's hand shot out, a $20 bill between his fingers. "Please," he said. "Allow me?" "Mayor, no. They're only $3. Just reading glasses." "It's nothing. Like you said, just reading glasses. I'm happy to help." He pressed the bill into Dale's palm. Rachel saw Dale's eyes widen. $20 for $3 glasses. Even in 1988, that was excessive. "Keep the change," Rennick said, his tone carrying weight beyond the words. Dale nodded quickly, pocketing the bill. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Rennick turned to Dale, his voice dropping. "Remember what we discussed. Check those expiration dates. All of them?" The pharmacist swallowed hard. "Understood, Mayor." Rachel followed Rennick out of the store, her new glasses in a small paper bag. The bright sun made her squint after the pharmacy's dimness. "Thank you for the glasses," she said, uncertain what else to say. "Think nothing of it." Rennick's political smile was back in place. "I should go. City business never stops." He walked briskly to his Lincoln, leaving Rachel standing on the sidewalk. What kind of health inspection required closed-door meetings and $20 tips? Weren't there specific departments responsible for inspections like that? "Take care, Rachel," he waved, already reaching for his car door. The heavy door slammed shut with more force than necessary. A metallic clink followed, distinct against the asphalt. Rachel glanced down to see something glinting in the sun. A key. Modern brass, no key ring attached. She bent to retrieve it, the metal warm from lying on the hot pavement. It must have fallen from beneath the mayor's car when the door disturbed it. Rachel hurried to the Lincoln, tapping on the driver's window. Through the tinted glass she could see Rennick with the car phone pressed to his ear, his face animated with what looked like anger. He glanced at her, waved dismissively, and pulled away from the curb. "Mayor!" Rachel called, but the Lincoln was already turning the corner. She examined the key. No markings indicated what it might open. Important enough to return immediately? She couldn't be sure. Back inside the library, Mrs. Hendricks looked up from date-stamping return books. "Could I use your phone?" Rachel asked. "I need to reach the mayor's office. Do you have his number?" "We have the City Hall main line," Mrs. Hendricks said, pulling out a laminated sheet of local numbers. "His private line isn't public." Rachel dialed the number on the heavy desk phone. It rang 4 times before switching to the answering service. A recorded voice informed her that City Hall offices were currently unavailable. "They might be at lunch," Mrs. Hendricks suggested, "or in a meeting. Try again later." "I will. Thank you." Rachel returned to her study room, slipping the key into her pocket. She settled her new reading glasses on her nose, such an odd gesture from Rennick, buying them for her. Almost fatherly, if she didn't know better. Harold's journal drew her back. She opened to where she'd left off, skimming through routine entries about city council meetings and budget discussions. Then the tone shifted. February 15th, 1980. The scope of corruption is worse than I imagined. 3 businesses operating without proper licenses, all with connections to the Reynosa cartel. They're using New Braunfels as a way station for drug trafficking. I've documented everything, but bringing charges means putting targets on backs, mine and my family's. Rachel's hands trembled. Harold had never breathed a word about cartels. March 3rd, 1980. Clyde Rennick announced his candidacy today. His platform of economic growth through business deregulation is code for letting these criminals operate freely. He talks about reducing burdensome inspections and streamlining permits. What he means is looking the other way while drug money flows through our town. Rachel almost smiled despite everything. That sounded like Harold. April 10th, 1980. The threats have started. Anonymous calls to the house. Rachel doesn't know. I intercept them when I can. They want me to withdraw from the race. Rennick's backers are getting desperate. I've increased security at public events, but I can't let fear win. This town deserves better. May 26th, 1980. Post-election result. Victory. 98% of the vote. The people have spoken. They want honest government. Rennick conceded publicly, but his eyes promised this isn't over. Rachel flipped through the journal. 2 hours had passed in what felt like minutes. At last she closed it, slipping off her glasses to wipe her eyes. The disappearance 3 months after the election. Rennick becoming mayor in the special election that followed. The investigation that went nowhere despite community support. Could there be a link? She needed to show these journals to Detective DeWitt. needed to ask why these connections weren't investigated 8 years ago. At the circulation desk, she asked to use the phone again. Mrs. Hendricks obliged without question. The police station answered on the second ring. The desk sergeant informed her that Detective DeWitt was out on a call, but she was welcome to leave evidence with the duty officer. "I'll come by after lunch," Rachel said. "This is too important to leave with just anyone." She hung up, her mind racing. The sun blazed overhead now, and her stomach reminded her she hadn't eaten since this morning. First food, then the police station. After all, the detective was away, and she needed strength for whatever came next. "Mrs. Hendricks, could you keep this box safe for me? I need to get lunch, but I'll be back." "Of course, dear. I'll put it right here behind my desk. Take your time." The noon sun beat down mercilessly as Rachel headed away from the library. She needed food, but the thought of sitting in a crowded restaurant with cheerful chatter and clinking dishes made her stomach turn. After everything today, Harold's body, the journals, the revelations about corruption, she craved quiet. 3 blocks west, she knew, sat a small diner that mostly served retirees and off-duty nurses from the nearby clinic. The food was simple but good, and more importantly, it would be peaceful at this hour. She'd barely gone 2 blocks when a small figure darted out from between parked cars. A boy, maybe 8 years old, with dark hair and brown skin that marked him as one of the migrant workers' children. He crashed into her legs, small hands clutching at her jogging shorts. "Please, Senora." His English was accented but clear. "My friend, they hurting him, teenagers, big ones." Rachel's first instinct was suspicion. The area had seen its share of petty crime, often involving children used as distractions. But the boy's eyes were wide with genuine terror, tears cutting tracks through dust on his cheeks. "Where?" she asked. "The playground." "Just there." He pointed down a side street. "Please, they gonna hurt him bad." Against her better judgment, Rachel let the boy lead her. The playground sat behind the old elementary school, closed for summer. Swings hung motionless in the still air. The metal slide gleamed like a mirror. No teenagers, no victim, no one at all. "I don't see—" They came from 3 directions at once. 3 men, moving fast and coordinated, not teenagers but adults, faces hard and purposeful. The boy had vanished like smoke. "No!" Rachel tried to run, but they were already on her. Strong hands grabbed her arms, her shoulders. "Help! Someone help me!" She writhed and twisted, expecting violence, expecting worse. But the hands weren't hitting. They were searching, patting down her sides, checking her waistband, digging into her pockets. "Got it!" One man held up the brass key. "Take her." A third man produced a cloth and a brown bottle. Chloroform, she recognized the sweet smell as he soaked the fabric. They meant to knock her out, take her somewhere. Terror gave her strength. As the man with the cloth approached, she brought her knee up hard into the groin of the man holding her right arm. He doubled over with a strangled cry, loosening his grip. Her free hand found the small canister in her shorts pocket. Pepper spray, part of her daily carry since Harold took office. She'd never used it, had prayed she'd never need to. The spray caught the chloroform man full in the face. He screamed, dropping both cloth and bottle. Rachel spun, spraying wildly, catching the other 2 as they tried to grab her again. In the chaos, the key fell and landed on the ground. She snatched it up and ran. Behind her, the men cursed and groaned, pawing at their burning eyes. Her old track training served her well. She sprinted down the street, screaming for help. 2 men loading a truck looked up as she approached. "Please, men attacked me, back there." They followed her to where the playground was and looked where she pointed. The playground stood empty now, peaceful in the afternoon glare. No sign of her attackers. "Lady, you feeling all right?" one asked carefully. "Maybe you need to sit down." "No, they were there. 4 men." But she could see the skepticism in their faces. a middle-aged woman in running clothes claiming assault in an empty playground. "Never mind." She ran on, not stopping until she reached the crowded main street. Only when she saw other shoppers, other normal people going about their day, did she slow to a walk. The library door had never looked so welcoming. She stumbled inside, her legs shaking, sweat soaking her shirt. Mrs. Hendricks looked up in alarm. "Mrs. Whitaker! Good heavens, what happened?" "Men attacked me." Rachel gasped out the story in bursts. "The boy, a trap. They wanted this." She held up the key. "Slow down, dear. Breathe." Mrs. Hendricks guided her to a chair. "Start from the beginning." Rachel forced herself to calm down, then explained more coherently. The key falling from Rennick's car. The boy. The men who'd searched her specifically for it. Mrs. Hendricks took the key, examining it under her desk lamp. "Look here," she said, pointing to faint markings on the head. "That's a Chi-Rho symbol, early Christian. It's almost worn away, but I'd recognize it anywhere." Chi-Rho? The first two letters of Christ in Greek. It's used to mark religious sites. This could be a church key, or... She paused. Or a cemetery key. Some of the old crypts use similar markings. They stared at each other, the implications sinking in. "Why would men attack me for a church or cemetery key?" Rachel whispered. "And if it's the mayor's, why not just ask for it back?" "Unless he couldn't ask," Mrs. Hendricks said slowly. "Unless having it connected to him would raise questions he doesn't want answered." Rachel's mind raced. Harold's journal entries about corruption. His body found this morning. And now, this key, something someone wanted badly enough to send thugs after her, thugs who had tried to knock her out with chloroform. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if they come back?" "You need to go to the police," Mrs. Hendricks said firmly. "Right now. Tell them everything. Maybe they can identify what this key opens." Yes, you're right." Rachel stood on still shaky legs. "Will you call a taxi?" "I don't think I feel safe enough to walk there." Mrs. Hendricks was already reaching for the phone. Within minutes, a yellow cab pulled up outside. Rachel gathered the box of Harold's belongings, clutching it like armor. "Be careful," Mrs. Hendricks said, walking her to the door. "And call me later. Let me know you're safe." Rachel slid into the taxi's vinyl back seat. "Police station, please," she told the driver. As the library receded behind them, Rachel gripped the key tight in her palm. Whatever it opened, someone was desperate to get it back. The police station smelled of burnt coffee and floor wax. Rachel hefted the box of Harold's belongings onto the desk sergeant's counter, her arms aching from carrying it. "I need to report an assault," she said, still breathless from adrenaline. The officer, a young man with a fresh academy haircut, looked up from his paperwork. His nameplate read, P. Martinez. "Ma'am, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "No, I managed to get away." Rachel launched into her story, the key from the mayor's car, the fake boy, the men who'd tried to take her. Officer Martinez took notes, his expression growing more skeptical with each detail. "You believe Mayor Rennick sent these men?" he asked when she finished. "The key fell from his car. Who else would know I had it?" Martinez set down his pen. "Mrs. Whitaker, that's a very serious accusation. Just because something appeared to fall from his vehicle doesn't mean it belonged to him." "But consider this," Martinez continued, warming to his theory. "Someone could have placed that key on top of the mayor's car, maybe someone who doesn't like him. When he opened the door, it fell. They might have been targeting him, expecting he'd find it. But you picked it up instead, so they came after you." The explanation was plausible, Rachel had to admit, but it didn't sit right. Why a key? And what about the Chi-Rho symbol? The librarian said it might be for a church or cemetery. Could it be related to finding my husband's body this morning? "That's quite a leap," Martinez said. "Look, we'll investigate, but we can't just accuse the mayor without evidence." Then check the key for fingerprints, Rachel insisted. Martinez glanced at the clock. Our forensic tech is at lunch. Won't be back for another hour. Besides, the key's been handled by you. Those men, possibly others. Prints will be compromised. But you could still try. We'll keep it as evidence, Martinez said, taking the key and dropping it into an evidence bag. When tech gets back, we'll process it. Maybe we'll get lucky, match some prints to our database. Rachel felt her frustration mounting. You need to at least inform Mayor Rennick about the key. I tried calling his office earlier, but no one answered. I'll make sure he's notified, Martinez said, though his tone suggested it wasn't a priority. Is Detective DeWitt back yet? I'd rather speak with him. Martinez shifted uncomfortably. Detective's still in the field. These investigations, you know how it is. Can't predict when they'll wrap up. Could be an hour, could be all day. I'll wait, Rachel said firmly. Suit yourself. Waiting room's through there, or you could go home, get some rest. We'll call you with updates. Rachel gathered Harold's box and moved to the waiting area. Hard plastic chairs lined the walls beneath faded safety posters. She sat, trying to process everything. The officer's dismissive attitude rankled, but what could she do? 20 minutes passed. Through the window to the main office, she watched officers come and go. Then a familiar figure caught her eye. A tall man in a dark suit, clearly not police. He shook hands with one of the officers, exchanged what looked like pleasant farewells. As he headed for the exit, Rachel noticed his car keys had a distinctive fob, Riverside Funeral Home. On impulse, she followed him out. "Excuse me," she called in the parking lot. The man turned. He was perhaps 60, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Yes? Can I help you?" "I'm Rachel Whitaker," she said, slightly out of breath. "I saw you work at the funeral home?" "Thomas Hartley," he replied, extending a hand. "I'm the director at Riverside, yes, also serve as mortician when needed." "Mr. Hartley, I know this sounds strange, but I need your expertise. I found a key with an unusual marking, a Chi-Rho symbol. I don't have it with me, the police took it, but I wondered, what might such a key open?" Hartley's eyebrows rose. Chi-Rho? That's quite specific. Why don't you come to my office? I have some reference materials that might help. His car was a dignified black Oldsmobile. The funeral home sat only 5 blocks away, a Victorian mansion converted to its current purpose. Hartley's office was all dark wood and leather-bound books. "Can you draw it?" He pushed a notepad and pencil across his desk. Rachel did her best to recreate the key and its marking. Hartley studied her sketch, then pulled out an old ledger. "Interesting," he murmured, flipping through yellowed pages. "That symbol matches the registry mark for a chamber in Comel Cemetery. It's the historic cemetery on the east side of town, has crypts dating back to the 1850s. Rachel leaned forward. "A crypt?" "Yes, but here's the odd thing. That particular crypt has been sealed for years. The Blackwood family crypt, if memory serves. Only a few keys were ever made, one for the family, one for the cemetery keeper, perhaps a spare." "But this key looked modern," Rachel said. Hartley nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. The original keys would have been skeleton keys, ornate things. What you describe sounds like someone had a modern copy made. That's unusual. The cemetery board is very strict about crypt access." "Why would someone need a new key to an old sealed crypt?" "I couldn't say," Hartley replied carefully. "But in my experience, when people seek unauthorized access to burial sites, it's rarely for good reasons." A chill ran down Rachel's spine. "I hope I've been helpful," Hartley said, walking her to the door. "More than you know," Rachel said. "Thank you." The bus ride home felt endless. Rachel slumped in a rear seat, her eyes tracking every person who stepped aboard. Her head throbbed with each jolt over potholes, and questions multiplied in her mind. Her house stood dark against the late afternoon sky. She'd left that morning for a simple jog and now returned to what felt like a different life. The front door key turned stiffly in the lock. When had she last oiled it? Harold had always handled such things. Inside, she placed the box in the corridor, then moved methodically through each room. Front door, locked and deadbolted. Kitchen door, locked. Windows, latched tight. The routine felt both paranoid and insufficient. If men could coordinate an attack in broad daylight, what good were locks? She collapsed onto the living room sofa, still in her sweat-stained jogging clothes. The afternoon sun slanted through Venetian blinds, painting golden stripes across the carpet. She should eat something, should shower, should do anything but sit here with her thoughts spinning. Time passed in strange intervals. The stripes of sunlight crept across the floor, climbed the far wall, faded to orange, then red, then gone. The room filled with shadows. She didn't turn on any lights. Her mind kept circling back to Hartley's words. The Blackwood Crypt at Comal Cemetery. Sealed for years. Why would Mayor Rennick have a key to a sealed crypt? Darkness fell completely. Through the window she could see streetlights flickering on, one by one. The house felt smaller with each passing minute, the walls pressing in. Every creak of settling wood made her heart race. Every car passing outside could be them coming back. She couldn't stay here. The waiting was driving her mad. Rachel stood abruptly. Decision made. The police station. She'd demand to see Detective DeWitt. Wait all night if necessary. Her car keys hung on the hook by the garage door. She'd take her own vehicle this time, no more depending on others. The police station sat 10 minutes away. She knew the route by heart, had driven it countless times during those first terrible months after Harold and Phoebe vanished. As she approached the final turn, her headlights swept across the parking lot entrance. A familiar figure caught her eye. Mayor Rennick stood beside his Lincoln, deep in conversation with someone. She slowed, not turning in. The other person was Officer Martinez, the same dismissive young cop from this afternoon. In the dim glow of the parking lot lights, she saw Martinez hand something to the mayor. It could have been anything, but Rachel's gut told her it was the Chi-Ro key, the evidence that should have been locked away or kept until the detective saw it. Rennick pocketed the item and got into his car. Rachel made a split-second decision. Instead of turning into the station, she continued straight, then pulled a U-turn half a block away. The Lincoln's distinctive taillights were easy to follow. She stayed 2 cars back, remembering advice from some crime novel she'd read. The mayor drove sedately, signaling every turn. They passed through downtown, then headed east toward the older part of town. When Rennick turned onto Cemetery Road, Rachel's hands tightened on the wheel. Comal Cemetery, just as Hartley had said. She killed her headlights as they approached the cemetery gates, pulling off onto a side road that served the groundskeeper's shed. Her dark blue Honda blended into the shadows beneath overhanging oaks. She cut the engine and waited. Through the wrought iron fence, she watched Rennick's Lincoln stop at the main gate. A figure emerged from the caretaker's cottage, a stocky man with a pronounced limp. They spoke briefly, then both men headed into the cemetery grounds. Rachel slipped out of her car, grateful she still wore dark clothing. The fence was low here, meant more for decoration than security. She climbed over carefully, landing soft on grass still damp from evening dew. The cemetery stretched before her, a city of the dead bathed in moonlight. Ancient oaks created pools of deeper shadow. She moved from tree to tree, following the bobbing flashlight beams ahead. The men stopped at a large stone structure near the cemetery's heart. Even in the darkness, Rachel could see it was old, weathered limestone with Gothic arches and iron doors. The Blackwood Crypt. She crouched behind a large headstone, watching as Rennick produced the key. It turned easily in the lock, no rust or resistance, despite the crypt's supposed years of disuse. The 2 men disappeared inside. Time crawled. Rachel's legs cramped from crouching. The stone she leaned against grew cold through her shirt. Exhaustion from the day's trauma weighed on her like lead. Her eyelids grew heavy. Just a moment's rest. A metallic clang jolted her awake. How long had she dozed? Minutes? An hour? The moon had moved considerably. Voices drifted across the still air. Rennick and the caretaker stood outside the crypt, their words carrying clearly in the cemetery's hush. "Keep watch tonight," Rennick said. "I'm taking the old padlock with me. Need to remove any evidence of tampering. I'll bring the original lock tomorrow." Rachel pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Evidence of tampering? The key she'd found was indeed for this crypt. The mayor's car started, headlights sweeping across tombstones as he drove away. The caretaker settled onto a bench near the crypt entrance, lighting a cigarette. Its orange glow marked his position. An hour passed. The caretaker smoked 3 more cigarettes, yawned repeatedly. Finally he stood, stretched, and limped away toward his cottage. But first he wedged a thick branch across the crypt doors, a crude but effective barrier. Rachel waited another 10 minutes, counting Mississippis to be sure. Then she crept forward. The branch was heavy, but not immovable. She set it aside carefully, wincing at every scrape against stone. The crypt door opened on well-oiled hinges. Inside, her eyes adjusted to deeper darkness. Stone steps led down. The air tasted of earth and age. She descended carefully, one hand on the cold wall. The temperature dropped with each step. At the bottom, moonlight filtering through ventilation grates revealed a chamber lined with burial niches. But her attention fixed on an anomaly, a section of wall that didn't match. Newer mortar, different stones. A door, hidden but not well enough. She pushed, and it swung inward. The smell hit first. Human waste, unwashed flesh, despair. Then she heard it. Soft sobbing. A voice weak and broken, pleading to shadows. "Not again. Please. Not again." Rachel's heart stopped. She knew that voice, changed as it was by years and suffering. "Phoebe?" she whispered, not daring to believe. The sobbing stopped. Silence stretched between them. Then, barely audible. "Mom? No. I'm hallucinating again." Rachel rushed forward, guided by sound more than sight. Her hands found a figure huddled in the corner, skeletal thin, trembling but alive. Impossibly, miraculously alive. "Phoebe," Rachel breathed, gathering her daughter into her arms. "Phoebe, Phoebe, my sweet girl." Phoebe was 18 now, but malnutrition had left her small as a child. Her cheeks were sunken, eyes enormous in her gaunt face. She clung to Rachel with desperate strength. "Is it real?" Phoebe whispered. "Are you real?" "I think I hallucinate sometimes." "I'm real, baby. I'm here." Rachel pulled back, studying her daughter's face in the dim light. Those were Harold's eyes looking back at her, filled with 8 years of horror. "Listen, we need to get help. I have to call the police." "No!" Phoebe's grip tightened painfully. "Don't leave me. He'll come back. He always comes back." "Shh, I know. But if I don't get help, they'll hurt us both. I'll be quick, I promise. Stay quiet." It took every ounce of will to pry herself free. Phoebe whimpered but nodded, curling back into her corner. Rachel forced herself to leave, to climb those terrible steps away from her child. Outside, the cemetery was still quiet. No sign of the caretaker. Rachel moved like a ghost herself, reaching her car without incident. She drove with shaking hands to the nearest payphone, 3 blocks away at a closed gas station. Her fingers fumbled with the receiver. She fed in a quarter and dialed. "Police emergency." "I need Detective Roy DeWitt or Officer Hans Carson," Rachel said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Only them. It's about the Whitaker case." "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger?" "My daughter. I found my daughter. She's been held captive. Please, only DeWitt or Carson. There's corruption, I think. I can't trust anyone else. A pause. Hold, please. Endless seconds ticked by. Then a familiar voice. Mrs. Whitaker? This is Detective DeWitt. Where are you? Comel Cemetery, the Blackwood Crypt. Phoebe's there, alive but barely. Mayor Rennick has been keeping her. Please, send help and medics. And hurry, the caretaker could return any time. We're on our way. Stay safe, Rachel. We'll be there in 10 minutes. She hung up, legs barely holding her. 10 minutes. She prayed it would be enough. Rachel drove back toward the cemetery with her heart hammering. Every second away from Phoebe felt like abandonment. The speedometer crept past 50 on the narrow road, reckless for night driving, but she couldn't slow down. As she approached the cemetery, in her rearview mirror, headlights appeared suddenly, blazing high beams that filled her car with harsh light. A black van coming up fast. Too fast. The van's bumper kissed hers with a metallic crunch. Rachel's Honda lurched forward. She gripped the wheel, fighting for control. The van struck again, harder this time. Her car fishtailed wildly. No! She yanked the wheel right as the Honda left the asphalt. Gravel sprayed. The world tilted as she careened down the shallow embankment. A massive oak loomed in her headlights. She stood on the brakes, tires screaming, stopping inches from the trunk. The van never slowed. Its taillights disappeared around the bend toward the cemetery. Toward Phoebe. Rachel threw the car into reverse, the wheels spinning in the loose earth. The Honda lurched back onto the road, its engine groaning in protest. She floored it, chasing after the van as fast as her 47-year-old heart would allow. At the cemetery gates, chaos. The black van sat askew, doors open. 3 men clustered around the caretaker at the crypt entrance. Even from here, she could hear raised voices. "Open it now," one man shouted. The caretaker pushed the stone door open. The branch barrier lay broken aside. They disappeared into the crypt. The caretaker fumbled with keys, hands shaking. The branch barrier lay broken aside. They disappeared into the crypt. Rachel abandoned her car and ran through the gates. She had to stop them, had to. They emerged quickly. Too quickly. One man carried Phoebe's limp form like a rag doll. Her daughter's head lolled back, arms dangling. "Phoebe!" Rachel screamed. The men looked up, startled. Then sirens split the night, beautiful, blessed sirens growing louder by the second. "Move!" The man holding Phoebe ran for the van. The others followed. Rachel sprinted to her Honda. If they reached the exit first, no, she wouldn't let them take her daughter again. She drove straight at the narrow cemetery exit, spinning the wheel at the last second. The Honda slid sideways across the gate, blocking it completely. She killed the engine and pocketed the keys. The van roared up, braking hard. Through the windshield, she saw the driver's furious face. He revved the engine, lurching forward as if to ram her. Police cars screamed into view, light bars painting the cemetery in red and blue. 3 cruisers, an ambulance. They surrounded the van in seconds. "Police! Exit the vehicle with hands visible!" The van doors flew open. Men spilled out, and Rachel heard them arguing. "Use the girl," one shouted. "She's our ticket out." "No," another man, the one holding Phoebe, backed away. The mayor said, "Don't touch her. She's his favorite. He'll kill us if—" "Screw the mayor! He's not here." They grappled for Phoebe. She fell to the ground between them, limp as a corpse. The police moved in fast, using the men's distraction. Detective DeWitt led the charge, Hans Carson flanking him. In moments, all 4 men were face down on the pavement. "You have the right to remain silent," DeWitt began, his voice carrying satisfaction as he cuffed the first man. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." Rachel was already running. She dropped to her knees beside Phoebe, gathering her daughter's skeletal form. "Phoebe? Darling, can you hear me?" Phoebe's eyes fluttered open. "Mom?" Her voice was a thread. "Is it over?" Paramedics surrounded them, gentle but efficient. "Ma'am, we need to examine her." They worked quickly, checking vitals, starting an IV. Rachel saw their controlled alarm at Phoebe's condition. Her daughter couldn't even sit up without support. 8 years of captivity had left her a living ghost. "Severe malnutrition," one paramedic murmured. "Dehydration. We need to transport immediately." They lifted Phoebe onto a gurney with infinite care. She whimpered, reaching for Rachel. "I'm coming with her," Rachel said, brooking no argument. Detective DeWitt appeared at her elbow. "Go," he said quietly. "We've got this scene secured. I'll meet you at the hospital. We have a lot to discuss." Rachel climbed into the ambulance, never releasing Phoebe's hand. As they pulled away, she glimpsed the 3 men being loaded into separate cruisers. The caretaker sat on the ground, head in hands, another officer standing guard. The ambulance doors closed, shutting out the chaos. In the relative quiet, broken only by medical equipment and the engine's hum, Rachel studied her daughter's ravaged face. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I promise, baby, you're safe." Phoebe's fingers tightened weakly around hers. For the first time in 8 years, Rachel dared to believe it might be true. The emergency room doors burst open as the gurney rolled through. Phoebe's skeletal fingers clutched Rachel's hand with surprising strength. "Don't leave!" Phoebe gasped, eyes wild with panic. "Please, Mom, don't leave me." The lead nurse, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, assessed the situation quickly. "We'll make an exception," she told Rachel. "You can stay, but sit there." She pointed to a chair in the corner. "Don't interfere with our work." Rachel nodded gratefully, positioning herself where Phoebe could see her. The medical team moved with practiced efficiency, cutting away Phoebe's filthy clothes. Rachel bit back a sob at what was revealed. Bruises in various stages of healing mottled her daughter's skin. Infected wounds wept pus. Her ribs stood out like a washboard. The medical staff cleaned each injury with gentle hands, murmuring reassurances. A female doctor leaned close to Phoebe, speaking softly. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something difficult. Has anyone hurt you in ways they shouldn't? Touched you inappropriately?" Phoebe's face crumpled. She nodded, a tiny movement that shattered Rachel's heart. "We'll need to do an examination," the doctor said gently. "To document everything, treat any injuries. Is that okay?" Another nod. Phoebe turned her face toward Rachel, seeking strength. Rachel stood abruptly. I need a moment." She fled the room, making it to the hallway before the sobs overtook her. She leaned against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the cold linoleum. 8 years. Her baby had endured 8 years of horror. The tears came in waves, each one carrying grief and rage and guilt. "Mrs. Whitaker?" She looked up to see Detective DeWitt and Officer Carson approaching. DeWitt crouched beside her, his weathered face full of compassion. "I'm sorry," Rachel gasped between sobs. "Nothing to be sorry about," DeWitt said firmly. "Take your time." Hans Carson offered her a handkerchief. She accepted it gratefully, wiping her face. After several deep breaths, she managed, "Let's talk. I need to tell you everything." DeWitt flagged down a nurse. "We need a private room for official police business." Minutes later, they sat in a small consultation room. Hans set up his portable typewriter on the table, threading in a fresh sheet of paper. "Start from this morning," DeWitt said, "after we found Harold." Rachel took them through it all, the mayor driving her to get Harold's journals, the strange encounter at the pharmacy, finding the key, the attack, Officer Martinez's dismissive attitude, following the mayor to the cemetery, finding Phoebe. DeWitt pulled an evidence bag from his pocket. Inside was the brass key. "Is this it?" "Yes," Rachel confirmed. That's the key that fell from Mayor Rennick's car. I got back to the station 5 hours ago, DeWitt explained. Didn't know about this key or your husband's journals until your emergency call. I pressed Martinez hard. He broke down, admitted Rennick paid him to hand over the key. He's in custody now. And Rennick? Being transported to the station as we speak. We confiscated this key from him. Those 3 men we arrested are singing like canaries. They told us Rennick called them today, wanted to move Phoebe, to deal with you because you heard too much, as they put it, and change the crypt lock. Rachel pulled out Harold's journal, which she'd kept with her. My husband documented everything. The corruption, the cartel connections, Rennick's platform that would have let criminals operate freely. Harold was fighting powerful people. He never told me the details because he wanted to protect us. He was a good man, DeWitt said quietly. He wanted genuine good for this town. Rennick must have hated him for winning re-election, so he arranged the kidnapping. DeWitt nodded grimly. 2 of the men confessed separately. They're part of the Reynosa cartel. That pharmacy you visited? They've been cooking meth in the basement. The pharmacist is their chemist. Rachel felt sick. They killed Harold. They held him in that church basement. The property's owned by shell companies connected to the cartel. They tortured him for information, police routes, inmate transfers. He gave it up to protect Phoebe, but they killed him anyway. Rennick had promised them protection if they eliminated your husband. My daughter, Rachel whispered. She confirmed sexual abuse. I heard her tell the doctor. DeWitt's jaw tightened. That's likely why Rennick kept her alive. The 3 men from cartel claimed they didn't know she was still alive until today, when Rennick ordered them to clean up both you and Phoebe. Those men who attacked me this afternoon. Same crew. Rennick panicked when he realized we've found the barrel. Then Martinez must have told him you had the key. He's a rat. When you called from that payphone, I'd already been back at the station for 2 hours, and Martinez hadn't said a word to me. He is one of Rennick's men. I'm sure of it. And all this time, Rachel said, struggling to comprehend. 8 years. How did no one know? The cemetery caretaker, Martin Solis, we have him in custody. Rennick paid him to guard Phoebe, keep her fed. Barely. The sick bastard admitted he sometimes used her himself, said it made him feel more powerful than the mayor. Rachel thought she might vomit. She's so thin, like a skeleton. How could they? Some men are sick beyond comprehension, DeWitt said quietly. They find pleasure in suffering. Some even have desires for the deceased. There's no understanding it. Why didn't you find them? Rachel asked, not accusing, just desperate to understand. The church basement wasn't on any blueprints. A 1940s renovation sealed it off, removed it from official records. I discovered that this afternoon when I was away. Plus, we probably had corrupt officers misdirecting the investigation. Rennick and his people must have planted false leads. They put Harold's car in the river to throw us off. We'll need to review everything now. A knock interrupted them. A doctor entered, the same woman who'd examined Phoebe. Mrs. Whitaker, your daughter is stable. We've treated her immediate injuries and started IV nutrition. She'll need extensive medical care, physical and psychological, but she's a fighter. Can I see her? Of course. Room 214. She's been asking for you. DeWitt stood. We'll handle things from here, Rachel, and we'll make sure Harold gets the burial he deserves. Full honors. Thank you, Rachel whispered. Room 214 was dim, machines beeping softly. Phoebe lay propped on pillows, an IV dripping nutrients into her stick-thin arm. She looked so small in the hospital bed. Mom! Her voice was stronger now, though still weak. Rachel rushed to her side, taking her hand carefully. I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. Is he really gone? The mayor. Yes, the police have him. He can't hurt you anymore. Phoebe's eyes filled with tears. I tried to be strong, like Daddy would want, but sometimes I thought I'd die down there. "You are strong," Rachel said fiercely. "The strongest person I know. You survived." They talked quietly, carefully avoiding the worst details. Phoebe's eyelids grew heavy, the medication and exhaustion taking hold. "Sleep, sweetheart," Rachel murmured. "I'll be right here." As Phoebe drifted off, Rachel settled into the bedside chair. She thought about the morning's jog that had started this cascade of revelations. Harold's body in the church, the journals revealing his fight against corruption, the key that unlocked 8 years of horror. Her daughter was alive, damaged, traumatized, but alive. Harold would finally have a proper burial. Justice would be served. Rachel watched Phoebe sleep, memorizing every detail of her face. The exhaustion of the day crashed over her like a wave. She rested her head on the edge of Phoebe's bed, their hands still intertwined, and let sleep claim her at last.